Chris Younts is our guest speaker tonight, and he is going to help us kind of sort through how things are supposed to work and how they may not be working. The Polish immigrant, we had to reschedule her for hopefully in January. She actually had a family medical emergency. And we were going to have Chris in, we just were having him in a little bit earlier than expected. So Chris, thank you for being here. So I will turn it over to you. Please.
All right. I was asked to go to the Pecan Valley Republican Women and give a presentation, and this was one of the ones I did, and they thought it was helpful. I gave it to another group, and they thought it was helpful. I knew the speaker had prior arrangements she had to be at or something come up, so I told Eileen I would be glad to come do it. It's hard to speak to your home crowd. You know, it's easier somewhere else. The definition of an expert is someone from out of town. But I did the best I could. I wore a jacket. I have slides. And actually, I don't live in the city limits, so maybe you can consider me out of town. I've gotten asked this several times with this event, the one in Brownwood, if this is an announcement for something. And the only announcement is I'm giving the program at the San Angelo Tea Party tonight. There's no bigger announcement tied to it. Anyway, I just want to go a little over the Constitution. I'm as bad as anyone. I get caught up in the hype and the propaganda and the news of the day and who's doing this and who's doing that. But when I stop and think about it, I'm listening to the media and I'm getting upset about things that maybe what I should be upset about is we're not following the original contract with America, which is the Constitution, and how all this is supposed to work. We have an institution overstepping their bounds, and we play into that narrative, but what we really should be upset about is that the institution that is supposed to be the check on that is supposed to have the power, is failing in their duty to do it. And that's why we have the problem. In other words, another way I guess you could say it is we're looking at the symptoms and we're not addressing the root cause. Anyway, so sometime when you go to a town hall or you're called in on a radio show, you're dressing a politician, you feel like this. And this is an actual picture. It was from my house, I believe, in about 1990. 88, looking at his age, I think he was about 2.
We thought maybe that was you.
No, that actually was my son, and that was a Raymer Bull, Joe, that we had. But we need to have his attitude, because if you really look at Matt, of course, he wasn't scared of anything when he was a kid. But you see, he's got his fist clenched, and he's walking up to that bull, and that bull doesn't know what to make of him. And this is the way maybe we need to approach our politicians. We lose sight. At the end of the day, they're our employees.
Yeah.
Now, many of y'all have businesses. If your employees talk to you the way I've heard politicians talk to the taxpayers, would you have that employee anymore? The employees have begun to think that they're the boss. And we see that on a lot of levels, not just federal level. We see that on a lot of levels. But anyway, we need to have this attitude. We don't need to be afraid. And when we do that, we're going to get the look like the bull, and they're going to go, "Oh my gosh, what now?" You know? But anyway, to move on. The power of the purse, Article 1, Section 7, and what does that really mean, and who has the power in Washington to do what? Have you wondered why in 2010 we heard, give us the House and we'll get rid of Obamacare? What did we do? Landslide election. Okay? Well, we didn't get rid of Obamacare. Well, if we just had the Senate too. Sounds reasonable, right? So we give them the Senate. We still don't get rid of Obamacare. Then we hear if we only had the White House. Makes sense, right? The president, he has the power to do everything. In America, a president's basically elected king. He just decrees, right? Well, that's not exactly how it works, but that's what the media and everyone would lead you to believe. Well, we got in the White House, we still have Obamacare. That hasn't worked out too well for us. I knew by 2011 we would not be rid of Obamacare, because the institution that had the power to get rid of Obamacare before it was ever implemented did not act. They said, give us the Senate. They said, re-elect us again and we'll get it done next time. Well, it's always next time. Planned Parenthood. Taxpayer funding of Planned Parenthood. Now this is an issue that I can really get passionate about. I believe the first role of government is to protect life. But we can make this argument even on an argument about the role of government. So you can really, even a politician that does not have the same pro-life stance that I have, you can make the argument on the role of government. Should taxpayer dollars be used to fund private institutions? Period. Well, they shouldn't. They shouldn't. Now, I can get passionate on it and make the argument from the other way, and I have a real problem when I have a House of Representatives that tells me, well, we can't withhold funding, or we can't defund. We'll get into that in a minute. We can't not fund this because if we did, the government would be shut down. Well, I kind of have an opinion. If our government is giving taxpayer dollars to a private institution to perform abortions, perhaps our government needs shut down. Okay? And my other point on that is, and I really get on this issue, but my other point is, if you won't stand up and do your duty to protect the most innocent, vulnerable lives in our society, and you're not willing to use the power granted you in the Constitution because we might shut down the government, what will you stand up for? Is there anything you'll shut down the government over? Because if you won't do it to protect the most innocent lives among us, which the first role of government is to protect life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Well, you can't have liberty and you can't have a pursuit of happiness if you're not alive. So that's the first role of government. So my question is, if you won't do it over that issue, what issue will you do it over? We went on down, at the time these were issues, Syrian refugee funding. We passed the omnibus bill, and it included funding for the Syrian refugee program. It included funding for the amnesty program at the time. And I mean, we could sit here and go on and on through the years with issue after issue about this. All right, so that brings me to the question, because I watch the TV and I listen to the pundits and I listen to elected officials doing interviews and stuff. Who's responsible for the problems? The president? Nope. He's not. Read your Constitution. So the president didn't give a budget. The president's not supposed to give a budget. The president is an executive. He's in charge of spending the money that you appropriate to be spent here and there. You determine, not the president. All right? The Senate. Well, there's nothing we can do about these things because we don't have the Senate. So is the Senate responsible for appropriating money? Well, you'll be led to believe that if you listen to some of our elected. No, it is the House. It is the House. Well, I kind of thought about this, and I went over it a little bit, and y'all don't throw any apples at me because I'm going to agree Obama was absolutely the worst president that I can have, surely in my lifetime. I mean, let's face it, Jimmy Carter was at least a good man. By far. But all I've heard is that Obama spent all this money. All right? And then I would go and I would say, why are we spending this money? Why are we funding Planned Parenthood? Why are we appropriating money to implement Obamacare? Well, Chris, you just don't understand. The Senate won't agree to that, and Obama would veto it. Sounds reasonable, doesn't it? That's the way we've been led to think our government works. It sounds very reasonable. So we go to a town hall, we do a phone town hall, we listen to the meeting, we go, dang it, we just had that Senate and presidency, right? Harry Reid's a problem, all right. Well, that was from 10 to 14. In 14, we got the Senate too. Well, guys, we can get this done now. Let's get rid of this Obamacare, and let's quit funding Planned Parenthood. Let's quit funding refugee programs, amnesty programs, et cetera, et cetera. Well, Chris, you just don't understand. We don't have the presidency. Darn it, I knew I misunderstood again. Okay. All right. Well, now we hear, okay, we have, am I moving around too much? Yes. We have the House, we have the Senate, we have the presidency. Yes. All right, guys, let's get her done, right? We can get her done now. Everything you've told me for the last 8 years, we've given it, we're there, right? Well, Chris, you just don't understand. I said, I knew I wouldn't. We just manage the Senate. We don't have the power. We don't have 60 votes in the Senate. Well, I get out the handy-dandy Constitution. I can't find anything about 60 votes in there for one thing. That's just the Senate rule, all right? But that doesn't even matter, and we'll get to that. Okay, so I'm just going to throw this out, and y'all don't throw anything at me. Just think about it a minute. If Obama was in charge and he doubled the debt without the House, without the Republican House, and for the last 2 years without the Republican Senate, that means the president's in charge of spending money. He makes the budget. He decides how much money to spend. Fair enough? Yes, fair enough. Well, in that case, you would have to support and say the most fiscally conservative president we have had, because the president controls it, was the last time the budget was balanced. And we weren't running a deficit. So Bill Clinton would be the most fiscally conservative president in America in the last 100 years.
And I'm my own grandfather.
Because if he was in charge of all that, he balanced the budget. Here's where the argument falls apart on what you keep hearing about this. We all know, oh, by the way, during that time frame, 98, 99, the Senate didn't have a majority of 60 votes. We didn't have 60 votes in the Senate. All right? We had the House of Representatives. Now, how, without the Senate and the President, did we get the budget balanced? Because we've heard for 8 years that you have to have all of it. Well, whatever you think about Newt, we had Newt and a Republican House that did their job according to the Constitution. They took their constitutional duty serious, and they did their job. By the way, we shut down the government 2 times over these budgets. We got welfare reform. We got very many conservative things. We didn't have 60 votes in the Senate. We had Bill Clinton for president. How could that be? Because we had a House that understood the Constitution and did their job. Okay? Now, we'll play town hall in a minute. But defund versus not appropriate. I think this is where we get in trouble a lot by the way we phrase the question. We ask, the way we ask, we'll say, well, we want to defund Obamacare. We want to defund Planned Parenthood. Now, defund means that it's already been funded, correct? In other words, defund is I give Cat $20, and then later I say, Cat, I want my $20 back. I'm going to defund you. Okay. In that case, they're telling you the truth. Once that money has been appropriated in a bill to To defund, to take that money back, does take off free. It's already been appropriated. There's the rub. They're telling you the truth. I can't say they're not. If you say defund, they're telling you the truth. All right? Not appropriated. Totally different than defund. Not appropriated. Cat says, hey, Chris, can you give me $20? And I say, not today. I'm not giving you $20. I didn't appropriate her the money. Only takes the House of Representatives to do that. That's all. So we need to be careful when we ask these questions and ask them in writing, because if they go and say, no, I didn't say defund. I said not appropriate. We'll get into the Constitution in a minute, what it says about that. Here's one of my pet peeves, and you'll see why in a minute. The Senate co-ops House bills because Article 1, Section 7 says only the House can originate revenue bills. So what the Senate does, and I'll show you in a minute, Obamacare, the TARP bailouts, I can name you many, I'll get into that in a minute. They co-opt these bills, and we're writing revenue bills in the Senate. Okay? And what they do, they co-opt a House bill, and they use the House number. And they say that is adhering to the spirit of the Constitution. Well, in a minute I'll show you that. Our founders disagreed with that, by the way. So anyway, let's move on. One of the people here tonight who we love dearly, I found this on the internet. Do y'all know who Chris Ann Hall is? She's a constitutional person, all right? Well, I'll name her tonight. I didn't name you out of town because I didn't have your permission, but this was written by law land to Chris Ann Hall. It says, I was recently contacted by a concerned Texan regarding a town hall meeting she attended with our congressional representative. Her email to me reads as follows. I have a constitutional question. At a town hall yesterday, we had a heated discussion with our congressional representative. I'll leave y'all can read it. Our question was, why isn't the House withholding funds, not appropriating, not actually, you phrased that right, withholding funds for Obama's overreaches? His reply, Conway's reply was, the House can't do that alone. It also takes the Senate. I've been under the impression the House alone controls the purse strings. Am I correct? Well, let's see what the founders say about that, what the Constitution says. Article 1, Section 7. All bills for raising revenue shall originate in the House of Representatives, but the Senate may propose or concur with amendments as on other bills. Now, words mean something, okay? Concur or propose amendments. That does not mean taking a bill, which I'll show you some in a minute, totally wiping out the whole language of that bill, completely rewriting that bill, and saying that originated in the House. Okay? That is not proposing or concurring with amendment. That's writing a new bill and co-opting a House number and say that's just an amendment. An amendment means changing it, not changing the whole thing. Okay, Article 1, Section 9 says, no money shall be drawn from the Treasury, but in consequence of appropriations made by law. Who can make law? The President? How does the President decide what money? I mean, how does he do the budget? How does he decide what money is appropriated? He can't make law. He can't do that. And regular statement and account of the receipts and expenditures of all public money shall be published from time to time. All right. So this is what the Constitution says, and I call the Constitution the original contract with America. We've had the contract with America, the contract with the GOP. I don't know how many contracts we've had, but the bottom line is the Constitution is the real contract with America that our government is supposed to operate under. All right. So let's look at James Madison. Now, I'm pretty sure he probably than elected officials today. He wrote it. He was the main graphic. All right. So I go to the Federalist Papers, and this one was actually written by James Madison. Number 58. Y'all need to read it. You can read the whole thing. Notwithstanding the equal authority which subsists between the two houses on all legislative subjects except the originating of money bills. It cannot be doubted that the House, composed of the greater number of members, when supported by the more powerful states and speaking the undetermined sense of the majority of the people, will have no small advantage in a question depending on the comparative firmness of the two houses. Except the origination of money bills. Okay? Now, here's something, and I really haven't gotten into this too much and studied it too much, but to me a revenue bill would be a tax bill. Okay, in today's language. But the more I read the Federalist Papers and the more I read their explanation about appropriations originating in the House, I'm not sure, and money bills, I'm not sure that it doesn't mean tax bills and spending bills. Because they're very suspicious. They don't say revenue here, it's money bills. And when we get on into some more, you'll see the appropriations part. I'm not sure in those days, maybe revenue in their terminology wasn't including spending bills also. All right, and here's why. The House of Representatives can not only refuse, but they alone can propose the supplies requisite for the support of government. That would be appropriations. All right? They get a word to hold the purse, that powerful instruments by which we behold in the history of the British Constitution an infinite and humble representation of the people, gradually enlarging the spirit of its activity and importance, and finally reducing, as far as it seems to have wished, all the overgrown prerogatives of the other branches of government. This power over the purse may in fact be regarded as the most complete and effectual weapon with which any constitution can arm the immediate representatives of the people for obtaining a redress of every grievance and for carrying into effect every just and measure. All right? But right here, the House of Representatives, to stop all the overgrown prerogatives of the other branches of government. Can the House stop funding for Planned Parenthood? Can the House stop funding for the Syrian refugees? Could the House refuse to appropriate money to implement Obamacare in 2010? According to James Madison, they could have. All right. Let's further clarify this intent. You don't have to take Chris Younts' word for it. He's just a kid from West Texas. All right? Further clarity of the intent comes from a discussion between Alexander Wyatt and James Madison, both members of the U.S. House representing the state of Virginia. Mr. Wyatt, the Constitution having authorized the House of Representatives alone to originate money bills places an important trust in our hands, which as their protectors we are not part with. I do not mean to imply that the Senate are to be less trusted than this House, but the Constitution, no doubt for wise purposes, has given the immediate representatives of the people a control over the whole government in this particular, which for their interest they ought not let out of their hands. I'm going to say we've let it out, the House has definitely let it out of their hands. Mr. Madison further clarified, the Constitution places the power in the House of originating money bills. The principal reason why the Constitution had made this distinction was because they are chosen by the people and supposed to be the best acquainted with their interests and ability. The House controls the money because they are our representatives. They're the closest to us. Okay? It's our tax money. That's why the House has that. All right. And this is not either one of them talking. The purse is a power placed in the hands of the House on a purpose and for a purpose. It's because this is supposed to be a government by the people. Well, the by the people is your representative. That's the purpose. It is in itself an important check on government power. Reigns in the hands of the people who control the spending and growth of government. Well, if the House isn't doing their job and not appropriate money, debt grows from 10 trillion to 20 trillion in 8 years. All right? When the House fails to maintain this check, when the House allows the Senate to co-opt a House bill, totally rewrite it, call it an amendment, and then proceeds to pass it. When the House passes a continuing resolution instead of a budget, that vital check fails and the House relinquishes what our framers thought to be one of the most important powers held in trust for the people. All right? Now, I'm going to use someone to help clarify my feeling on the amendment issue and co-opting and rewriting bills. Well, where is that? Okay. Thomas Jefferson on an original intent. Now, when we read Federalist 58, and we listen to James Madison, and we read the Constitution, wouldn't you think the intent was to put the power of the purse in the hands of the House alone because they represent the people? That's what it says. All right. On every question of the construction of the Constitution, let us carry ourselves back to the time when the Constitution was adopted, recollect the spirit manifested in the debates, and instead of trying what meaning may be squeezed out of the text or intended against it, conform to the probable one in which it was passed. Now, maybe I'm crazy, but when I read the Federalist Papers, when I read the Founders, when I read the Constitution, I don't think the spirit manifested was that the Senate could take a House bill, totally wipe the language out, create a tax bill, and then say it originated in the House. I don't think that was the spirit that Article 1, Section 7 was written in. Okay? We'll go back to this one. Who here supported my favorite bill of all time? The bill that, and I've said it before, the bill that started America down the hill that we're seeing today, the bill that actually kind of destroyed the very fabric that this country was built on and what we believe. And that was that no one was too big to fail. Well, we found out there are people too big to fail. There's also a law that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. In America today, and I don't know, you just think about this. If we have people that are too big to fail, do we have people that are too small to succeed? I mean, that begs the question. Anyway, y'all probably, the Paul Wellstone Mental Health Act. Man, that sounds great. We want to help people with their mental health, right? Well, absolutely. This was the Senate's October 2008 Economic Stimulus Relief Bill, known as the TARP, known as the bank bailouts. All right? This bill originally, this is how conflated this gets and why it's so hard to look these things up. This bill originally introduced in March 2007 and passed the House as the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act of 2008. I'm all for that. We shouldn't discriminate on people because of genetics. Absolutely not. All right? Sounds great. All right. In October 2008, it was co-opted as a so-called vehicle. We'll go back to what Jefferson said. All right, is this the spirit of the Constitution? To pass the relief bill with an amendment that rewrites the whole bill. The House's initial vehicle was H.R. 3997, but they failed to pass their amendment co-opting the bill. So if y'all remember, I know this history great, on September 29th, the bailouts failed in the House. Senate added $1 billion pork spending over in the Senate, co-opted the Paul Wellstone Mental Health Act to get this H.R. 1424 number, sent it over to the House, and on October 3rd, the House passed it. And that's the history of the TARP bailout.
Did they know what they were voting on?
Well, I would hope so.
Or were they just going by that title, not realizing that?
No, they know. They know. Yeah, they know. Yeah, there's no way. I mean, they knew they were voting for the bank bailout part two. I mean, yeah, they know that. All right, here's another one.
Representative admits to it too.
Our representative admits to knowing about it because
All right, here's another one y'all will love. HR 3590. To amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to modify the first-time home buyer's credit in the case of members of the armed forces and certain other federal employees and for other purposes. Should we, hey, maybe the first time a service member buys a house, maybe we give him a little tax break or something, right? It doesn't sound bad. I mean, what could be bad about this? The act was cited as the Service Members Home Ownership Tax Act of 2009. Right? Y'all know what this is? This is Obamacare. The Senate co-opted the Service Members Home Ownership Tax Act, totally rewrote it, and actually created a tax bill. The Supreme Court actually said that. Right? This is the Senate's health care bill. The bill started off with text regarding an unrelated matter. But the Senate has co-opted this bill as a vehicle for passage of their reform and changed the text NO to the health care bill. They do this because the Constitution requires all revenue bills to start in the House. And their health reform plan involves revenue. So they have chosen to work off a bill that started in the House, even if that bill is unrelated. Here's my question. We had a lawsuit over the constitutionality of whether the subsidies on Obamacare were constitutional or not. That's when it came out that it was deemed a tax. My question was, wherever was the lawsuit challenging that the Senate co-opted a House bill, the Service Members Home Ownership Tax Act, and created a revenue bill? And is that the meaning in the Constitution? Is that what Madison says the meaning was? Or why did that case never come up? Why did we never file that lawsuit? Well, I have a theory because we never wanted to get rid of Obamacare to begin with, because what are we going to run on next cycle if we get rid of Obamacare? Okay? Because I think the House had the power to not implement appropriations to ever implement Obamacare.
Well, and plus, I would think the House would be irate. I mean, they write a bill, they send it over to the Senate, they totally gut it, rewrite it, and the House doesn't even say anything about it.
Well, there's a lot of power, and I'm going to go off on Chris Younts here. This isn't in the Constitution or anything. There's a lot of power in the nothing we can do re-election campaign.
Well, I agree with that.
Okay? How can we hold you accountable? There was nothing you could do. It was that dirty Senate that did it. I mean, there's a lot of power in that. If you think, we hear that all the time. It's never anyone's fault in this country anymore. And we hear it from the halls of our government the same as we hear it at the elementary school. I mean, it's never our fault, But that's why, they should be irate, I call it. They should stand up for their duty. That's my point. They should stand up for their duty in the Constitution and say, file 13. You can't write revenue bills. That's our job. And furthermore, the more we read into this, I think maybe you can't write spending money bills either. You can't totally rewrite a bill and create that. You can propose amendments to that bill, but you can't totally rewrite our bill and say it originated in the House when you wrote every word of it. That's my argument. The House, by far the most powerful institution in D.C., for a purpose, and we went over that. It represents us. Is felling down on their constitutional duty. I mean, there's just not a way to put it nicely. I've tried. There's just not. Okay. This is a fun one. This one doesn't have anything to do with that. This is just showing when you try to look up bills how fun this is and the wording they use that is actually hilarious when you stop and study it. It's one of my favorites. Okay, we had a bill passed in 2013, and I read on TV and stuff talking about this. The No Budget, No Pay Act of 2013. If we fail to get a budget passed, we don't get paid. And the people went, yeah, You don't do your job, you don't get paid. We're getting on the right track, right?
I ain't gonna see no light.
Okay. Let's talk about the no budget, no pay act a minute. Here's what it did. It suspended the debt ceiling. Okay? So we didn't need a budget. We were just going to spend money without a budget. We don't have a debt ceiling. We can borrow whatever we want to borrow. All right? It didn't raise the debt ceiling. It suspended the debt ceiling. All right? Anyway, there's that. Here was the part I like. Section 3. Holding salaries of members of Congress in escrow upon failure to agree to a budget resolution. Wait a minute. This was the no budget, no pay act. What really gets fun, when you really get in the law and look at it, not only was it held in escrow, not only did we never get a budget, everybody still got paid. Okay? What was really funny when you got to reading it, they drew interest on the money in escrow while we're drawing 0.5% on our CDs. I wanted to know if I could put my money in. Can I not get paid until we pass the budget too? Right? I mean, anyway, but just when we, and I go back to, there's the media and the propaganda. We will hear these bills and we'll hear people touting these bills, and this no budget, no pay act. Absolutely. Sounds great. I'll probably support it. We have to get spending under control. We suspended the debt ceiling. That's not getting spending under control. Anyway, that's a fun one for me. All right. Let's go to another subject about the power of the Congress. Article 1 deals in the Constitution with, who's it directed to? The legislative branch, of course, right? How Congress will be set up, etc. Article 2 is about the executive branch, correct? How that, right? Is Article 3 directed to the judicial branch? No. Article 3 is directed to the legislative branch. Okay? The judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court and in such inferior courts as the Congress may from time to time ordain and establish. Well, if the Congress can ordain and establish, the Congress can do away with, right? I mean, this is directed to the legislative branch, and we'll get further into it. All right? Section 2. This good behavior. This is a thing because, you know, good behavior, people don't necessarily exhibit good behavior for their lifetime. Is it a lifetime appointment? Is that what good behavior means? Was that the spirit the Constitution was written in? Good behavior means life, no matter what you do. Okay, I think we could look into that real deep too. Anyway, here's the part I want to get to. The judicial power shall extend to all cases of law and equity arising under this. Y'all can read that, all right? But let's get to the point. In all cases affecting ambassadors and other public ministers and consuls, and those in which a state shall be a party. Now listen, if we have to look above that, that would be between two or more states, between a state and citizens of another state, between citizens of different states, between citizens of the same state claiming lands under grants of different states, and between a state or the citizens thereof and foreign states, citizens or subjects. All right? All that they're defining which of the state is a part. The Supreme Court shall have original jurisdiction. That means, on these cases, the Supreme Court has jurisdiction. There's no question. That's their job. That is their job. In all other cases before mentioned, the Supreme Court shall have appellate jurisdiction, both as to law and fact, with such exceptions and under such regulations as the Congress shall make. So who decides what the Supreme Court has jurisdiction over? Not the Supreme Court, Congress. Now think about that. I kind of drew up two little bills that are kind of dear to my heart, and this is really how simply worded. Of course, you get there, you have to get the attorneys to word it, and it would end up being a full page instead of a paragraph. All right? But look at this. Think of all the applications of this. Since Congress can determine what the Supreme Court has jurisdiction on, appellate jurisdiction, after today, by law, the issue of abortion will be remanded to the individual states, and the federal judiciary will no longer have jurisdiction in the matters involving the issue of abortion. Now, y'all think Chris is crazy, but he's going to show y'all something in a minute. After today, by law, the issue of marriage will be remanded to the individual states, and the federal judiciary will no longer have jurisdiction in matters involving the issue of marriage. Just think how many of these Supreme Court overreaches dictating society construction, I guess, that could be done that you just plug it in. Now there's marriage and abortion, but plug in any of them. Bathroom, whatever, okay? I don't think they've gotten that far on bathrooms, but anyway. Now y'all say, Chris, that's crazy. That's not the way things is. You're wacko, right-wing, crazy conspiracy guy. You don't understand how things work. The Supreme Court has remained aloof from the scholarly contest, leaving its precedents to stand for broad congressional authority to limit the appellate jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. Thus far, the court has followed, and this was back then, has followed the lead of John Marshall, who stated in the Virginia Ratifying Convention, where they ratified the Constitution, Congress is empowered to make exceptions to appellate jurisdiction as to law and fact of the Supreme Court. These exceptions certainly go as far as the legislature may think proper for the interest and liberty of the people. That's why I say Article 3 is directions to the Congress on what their job is. Right?
Comment?
Yes?
The president has to sign off on it to become a bill. And then
Does he?
they can decide whether it's constitutional or not.
Do they have jurisdiction? Yeah.
Yeah.
But it is constitutional that the, man,
Well,
I'm taking that straight out of the
What
Constitution.
if they can come up with a line of rhetoric that says it isn't?
Well, that does that. I mean,
I know, I understand what
well, and here's my point. I'm not arguing that. We've been doing that for years. But what I'm saying is, as long as we don't understand, as long as we don't start holding people accountable, as long as we keep buying the rhetoric, then I mean, you know, if what you're doing is not working, I mean, if banging your head against the wall is not getting you anywhere, well, the word's Einstein. To keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. Well, to keep buying these arguments when we know what the Constitution says and the excuses, it's the definition of political insanity. But anyway, no, I'm agreeing with you. I know the way things are. Yeah.
Well, that's another thing, another fallacy though, is that the Supreme Court is the final interpreter of the Constitution. That's not accurate. That's not the original intention.
Well, that's what I go back to.
Yeah.
And they can't, I mean, you go back to, they only have original jurisdiction on very limited matters. Okay? Now, and I'm still looking for the lawsuit about the tax deal on Obamacare, but I'll never see that. So, you know, and that plays into the way things are today. I'm using that argument playing into the way things are today, that the Supreme Court said it was a tax. Well, Supreme Court ruled on this because, here's what I'm going to show you. I know this sounds crazy and pie in the sky. I'm going to give you an example. This has been done. This has been done. across state lines. Across state lines, one of my pet peeves. Anyway, what happened was, there was a Supreme Court case, United States versus Southeastern Underwriters Association. All right? And the Supreme Court said that the court held that an insurance company that conducted substantial business across state lines was engaged in interstate commerce and was thus subject to federal antitrust regulations. This was a Supreme Court decision. Well, and I'm not going to say there probably wasn't some lobbying money involved or whatever, but whatever the case, it proves the point. The legislative branch said, Supreme Court, you're wrong on the Constitution. You're wrong on the Constitution. That's not what it says. And by the way, you don't have jurisdiction on that. So what we did, we passed the McCarran-Ferguson Act of 1945, which told the Supreme Court, give states the authority to regulate the business of insurance without interference from federal regulation, unless federal law specifically provides otherwise. The Act provides that the business of insurance and every person engaged in there shall be subject to the laws of the several states which relate to the regulation or taxation of such business. Congress passed the McCarran-Ferguson Act primarily in response to the Supreme Court case that we just talked about. All right, we still operate under McCarran-Ferguson today. Well, I take that back. We changed that in the ACA. We do allow interstate pooling of insurance now. We've done that since 2010 when the ACA passed. We have been doing interstate pooling of insurance. All right? And here's something that's always fun, and I forgot to lead in with it, and I always remember this. Does anyone in this room have Mutual of Omaha? Or does anyone have Aetna?
Yeah.
Does anyone have Humana? Are any of those companies headquartered in the state of Texas? If we don't sell insurance across state lines, how'd you buy that? How do you have that? The agent that sold that Mutual of Omaha to you, he was violating the Supreme Court. He was violating, McCarran-Ferguson. What are you doing buying insurance across state lines? Mutual of Omaha's in Omaha, Nebraska. That's 3 state lines away. Humana's in Kentucky. I'm not sure how many that is. Aetna's in, I believe, Connecticut. I don't know how many state lines that is.
My Aetna is just prescription thing.
No, right.
I don't know if that.
But to my point is, we've been selling insurance across state lines for years. It's about, do you believe the federal government regulates insurance, or do you believe the individual states should regulate insurance? I mean, because let's face it, guys, across state lines, and I like Grandpa, and I really disagree with him on this. Because it's not free market, and we'll get into that in a minute. But if the state of Texas doesn't regulate insurance in the state of Texas, who's going to regulate it? Federal government. Now, I mean, who really do you want regulating this insurance? We say we want the government out of our health care, and we mean the federal government. But we want them in it now? We don't trust the state of Texas. My favorite one is people tell me, well, we do this just like car insurance and sell it across state lines. Did you know every state sets their own liability rates from state to state? Why do you think if you have Liberty Mutual, they write you through a Texas County Mutual company? We've been selling insurance across state lines for 200 years. Okay? I mean, that being said, what I'm saying is, whether you're for or against it, I just want you to understand that's not a panacea to the problems. That's not going to, well, I'll get into that in a minute if I have time. Okay, well, and I'll just give you all Chris Younts on insurance. Why are we not solving this problem? Health insurance is not health care. Okay? Now, regardless of rumors, and I've heard them, I don't hate puppies. I don't hate children. I don't want them sick and dying. That's not why I favored repealing the ACA. The point is, health insurance is not health care. Two totally different things. All right? But the insurance is not an entitlement. Are you entitled to insurance? You're entitled to have insurance. That doesn't even make sense. Are you entitled to have car insurance? Well, depending on your driving record, you might find out you're not entitled to it. Right? Insurance is not health care. Insurance is a financial vehicle to protect against the loss of assets from an unknown and unforeseeable event. That is basically what insurance is. Okay? It's not health care. Now, this part everybody gets mad at me and throws things at me. The only way to lower premiums is through underwriting. Being able to quantify and qualify risk and set prices accordingly. Okay? And what that means is that insurance companies get to underwrite you according, just like they underwrite you according to your driving record. They underwrite you according to your health. Now, hey, I have as much empathy for anyone as on that subject. My wife has MS. I understand what I'm saying here. Yeah, Kim.
Would you define underwriting for us?
Quantify and qualify risk. That's the purpose of underwriting.
That's the purpose of it.
That's the purpose of underwriting. Because how do you set a price if you can't quantify and qualify the risk?
Yeah.
Okay? Well, again, the across state lines is not a panacea or magic bullet. The ACA, Obamacare, allowed interstate pooling in Section 1333. How did that work out? Anybody have a blue state, multi-state plan now? They're for sale in San Angelo. Multi-state plans. Interstate pooling of risk. All right? The free market. I hear everyone, we want free market health insurance. Yeah, me too. But let me explain this. This statement is not the free market. The government cannot force me to buy a product. I agree. However, if I wish to purchase, then the government must force a company to sell me their product. Free market, baby. All right? So, all right, anyway. Mind you, leave health insurance regulation to the states. It worked good for us for a lot of years. Yes, it had some problems. Let's address the problems we had, not create new problems like we've done to blow the whole thing up. All right? Allow a waiver to those who wish to buy coverage below state recommended levels. Did you know that in the state of Texas, for the last 20 years, you could buy a health insurance policy that did not meet the regulations set forth by the Texas Department of Insurance? All you had to do is sign a waiver saying, I understand this policy does not meet the standards set forth by the Texas Department of Insurance, and I wish to purchase it anyway. Because I'm free and I'm in America, by gosh, and I live in Texas. Texas said, okay, you can buy whatever you want to. Just let us off the hook for liability. Okay? It doesn't mean what we said. All right? Allow free market underwriting to result in lowering premiums. And yes, that means that we're going to institute protection in place since 1996 for portability of coverage and all that. And this means if we're going to allow free market underwriting to result in lower premiums, that we're going to have to reinstate risk pools such as the one the state of Texas had. I know I've been on it for years, okay, for those with truly uninsurable conditions in the free market. Because you can't have both. I mean, you can't have a free market and guaranteed coverage for anyone. Okay, you can't buy house insurance after your home is on fire. I mean, that'd be cool. You know, I'll pay the fine, but hey, my house is on fire. Can you write that up? Yeah, let me get on that and we'll pay for it. It won't work. It's the same thing, Roy. I know that's silly, but I'm making a point on that. But anyway, that's all I had. I know it went all over the place, but it was too long. But
That's good.
Question. Can I
Yes,
ask a
sir.
question? Remember the Supreme Court, a few years ago, when the same-sex marriage issue went all the way to the Supreme Court? And the Supreme Court said, I think, I'm going to kind of wrap it up in football. They said, well, we can't, basically they said they couldn't see anything wrong with it. Well, good grief, that was just said, well, okay, well, it's okay. So, man, here come the floodgates, man, there was lines around the block. You know, same-sex couples were getting marriage lines. They didn't say it was okay. They just didn't say it wasn't okay.
Well, and we go back, there's even another avenue to some of these things that we didn't touch on in the Constitution. I was just touching on Congress's job in jurisdiction on this. There's another side to that. You know, everyone, we support the 10th Amendment, we support the 10th Amendment. Well, you know, I think the state of Texas could have said, sorry, you don't have the authority in that area.
But the Supreme Court doesn't have, they don't have the power of the Congress. They can say,
No.
they can make up their mind what some way, the way it should be, but they can't, just because they say so does not mean the people that, what I'm saying, they don't make the final rule.
It's a decision on a certain case. Now, we've gotten into all the things, and I'm not an attorney, disclaimer, but I know we work off case law all the time. Well, you know, sometimes that prior court's decision might have been wrong. Okay? So we don't need to just rely on case law to determine constitutionality. I mean, you can go backward and look at Barron versus Baltimore in cases through the years where what the Supreme Court has said, for example, about states' authority has changed. Okay? I mean, so you can do that. But what I was touching on with this is that the Congress could tell the Supreme Court, well, that's real nice, but you don't have authority. You don't have appellate jurisdiction on the matter of marriages. That's not ambassadors. I mean, that's not, states are not, I mean, that's not between states. And I was just using that example where we could do it all I think, but I agree with you. A Supreme Court decision is not necessarily law. It's an opinion. It's an opinion on what that law says.
That's right.
Well, another court may decide, let's quit doing case law because the next court, that's a double-edged sword. I understand. But is it really when the Congress can always say, like they did under Southeastern Underwriters case, then the Congress can come back and say, sorry, you got that one wrong.
Well, see, the Supreme Court doesn't, they try to interpret the Constitution. They don't go by what it says.
Well, but to interpret it, I agree.
They make up their own rules.
But don't they need to go back to this?
But it's a living constitution.
Chris, John Kasich said the Supreme Court said same-sex marriage was the law of the land. You mean he was wrong?
Well, then, yeah, because the court can't make law.
The first time Kasich was on.
The only reason is that the Supreme Court said it didn't say anything wrong with it.
Not an entitlement. What about health care?
Isn't an entitlement. I'm going to say that. I'm going to say it's not an entitlement. Now, entitlement means you're entitled. Now, as a society, do we want to provide health care to people that couldn't get health care? Probably so. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but an entitlement, I don't think you're really entitled to it.
Well,
You know?
what's even worse is that people are calling it a right.
Well, that's an entitlement. I mean,
There's a difference between
it's a
a right
right.
and
Well, there's
a
a
right.
difference in a right and entitlement, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, you know, but then again, I go back to the role of government in these things. And as a society, we want, look, I don't hate puppies and children. I don't want to see children out on the street. I mean, right? But what about our churches? What about our, I was in a church over here called, a hospital called St. John's. I wasn't Catholic. Everybody laughed at me. I was a teenager. Down at Shannon, ER, they told me I was sick. Well, they told me, you're going in the hospital. I said, I'm not going to the hospital. I'm 17 years old. I'm going to the hospital. What are you talking about? And he said, oh, no, you're going to the hospital. Well, he convinced me. I'm going to die, you know. So, anyway, they said, well, what hospital you want to go to? I said, St. John's. My mom and dad looked at me and they went, we use Shannon, Chris. Why don't you want to go? I said, I'm going to tell you what, if I'm in as bad shape as they say I'm in, those nuns coming by and praying for me every day is a good thing, and I want every bit of that. Yeah. Anyway, I spent 3 weeks at St. John's, and the nuns came by and prayed for me every day.